On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Gulia. And Gulia was married to a manipulative, emotional, and financial abuser. It's a story of gaslighting, control, infidelity, isolation, the legal system, crazy making, custody, smear campaigns, and parental alienation. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and with me today we have Gulia. How are you?
I'm great, Brandon. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and it's so surreal to be the one talking in that intro. I've heard that intro so many times, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for being here, and if you want to be a guest like Gulia is today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com and click on the guest form button at the top of the page. There you can read all of our instructions, and please read them all. And send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@pm.me or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. Also, we are going to be rolling out a new weekly newsletter in support of the early week episodes, which will have a workbook for all the new Survivor Story releases in them, so you can identify what might be going on in that week's episode in your current relationship or your past relationship. So go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Bottom of the page, or close to the bottom of the page, you'll see the sign up form for our newsletter, so you can go and do that. And we will also be having a monthly newsletter as well, which will have a lot more things like policy and news, recommendations for other shows, tips, and helpful blogs that we think are useful for everyone as well. And we do not have a content warning for this episode, so that is your no content warning for today. And today you're going to hear Gulia's story. And Gulia was married to a real piece of work. It was all about control, isolation, using Gulia for money, and then having the gall to make Gulia feel like she's not doing enough when he is doing nothing. And Gulia was caught in this person's web for a long time, and they had no shame. There were crocodile tears going on, but no shame. And thank goodness Gulia had support after she eventually punched through the isolation and the shame aspect of things. So a big thank you to Gulia for being here today. And I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Gulia, the floor is now yours.
Hey, Brandon. I'll start with my childhood and kind of the person that I was leading up to this whole situation that I got myself into. I have 3 younger brothers and parents that are married. They've been married for 50 years now. I grew up in a rural town and just had a really idyllic, calm, no kind of trauma or anything like that in my childhood. I was sheltered for sure. Grew up just seeing my parents model empathy for people, being really trusting of people. I was kind of had a Pollyanna type of view of the world. I thought I looked for the goodness in people, and I really just trusted people and believed that there was goodness in everybody, and evil people didn't really exist except in some movies, but I wasn't really allowed to watch those. So I also was type A personality, being the oldest with 3 younger brothers, and very textbook people pleaser, helper, trying to just get along with everybody. And that kind of played into becoming a target for the person that the story is later about. And I got married young in my 20s to somebody who was not the person that the story is about. We were married for about 7 years, and I had 2 children with him. We split up amicably, didn't have any conflict. He's a conflict avoider type of personality, as am I. So we kind of went our separate ways, and I had mostly custody of the children. It was kind of fluid, but we didn't ever go to court or anything like that.
So you grew up, you're a people pleaser, you're a helper, you're an achiever, you have empathy for people, and you've already experienced one relationship. The relationship didn't work out. you're conflict avoidant. You don't like to bring up issues, but eventually this relationship does dissolve. You have 2 children. How are you feeling about yourself at this time? How are you feeling about like your place in the world, what you're going to do? This is like a interesting time period because for a lot of people, you could be really vulnerable during this time. So what was life like for you at this moment?
Sure. So once I had split up from my first marriage, I was single for about 3 years. I'm not a someone who really believes or like advocates for divorce. So it was kind of shameful for me a bit to have been divorced, but I moved on and I wasn't looking to date anybody. I was feeling just really happy with where I was at in life. I felt like I had got out of a relationship that had a lot of maybe toxic feelings in there, and I was just in a good space. I didn't want a relationship, happy to be where I was. I was working full time with a good job, and my kids were doing well. I was teaching Sunday school and involved in the community, volunteering, and just not interested in dating anybody. I would have been quite happy never getting married again. I have a lot of that in my family where there's a lot of the aunts that I have and great aunts that never married. And I kind of saw myself going down that path. So so then when my mom had said to me one day that she had set me up a profile on an online website, dating website. And I was pretty shocked. And I'm like, Mom, like, why would you do that? I'm not interested in dating anybody. But I guess maybe she had picked up on some feelings that I might have been repressing or feeling and had done that. And I thought about it and wasn't really interested. But then after a while, a couple months went by and I started to get curious mostly to see what she had put on the profile and how she had filled it out. So I went on the profile one evening after the kids had gone to bed and was looking at how she had set it up, and I added a picture and was kind of just playing around, and it was more like just entertainment for me at that time. I wasn't interested in a relationship. But then I ended up connecting with somebody, and so the next time that I had gone on the website, I had this match for a guy that was sort of in my area. And things kind of took off from there where we started chatting in the chat room. And I would, after the kids were in bed, I would go down to the computer and he would be sending me messages. It seemed like he was always available whenever I wanted to chat. He was there and he asked a lot of questions. And it felt like he was really interested in me as a person. He would ask me like what I was reading, and I would say, "Oh, I'm reading this specific book," and he'd be like, "Oh, no way! I just read that book," and then he would rattle off some phrases from the book, and it was a book series that was very kind of a different kind of worldview. It'd be like talking about how men have the desire to rescue a beauty and to have an adventure, and it just sounded so fairy tale-ish. So we really connected over these books, and he would say things like, I'll just backtrack a little bit. So on his profile, he had said he had a 12-year-old and the kids that were 12 and 6. And so when we were talking in the chat, I had mentioned one day, I said, "Oh, so you have a 12-year-old, like what grade is he in? Is he in grade 6 or whatever it was?" And he said, "Yeah." And then I said, "Oh, so the 6-year-old then he would be in what, like grade 1?" And then he said, "No." And then just no. And then I said, "Well, is he in kindergarten?" And he said, "No, that's a discussion for another day." And that kind of was the first time I remember just feeling a little off. I was like, that's kind of weird. And then I thought, well, maybe he's got like a learning disability or something, or maybe there's some reason that he's not in school. So I just kind of brushed it aside and kind of went back to okay, we'll just talk about like the fluff things, not the heart issues. So we'll get away from like the details of each other's lives. So we went back to talking about books and that kind of thing. And we did that for about maybe a month. We were a month to a couple of weeks where we were chatting online. And then I think it was actually I who had said, you know what, maybe we should meet. Like, enough of this chatting, let's meet. And he was all over that. He said, sure. And then we ended up arranging to meet, oddly enough, on Christmas Day, because we were both going to be without kids. Because he had these two children as well. And before I met with him, though, I thought, well, I should really do a search. I'm going to be responsible here, and I'm going to do a background check on him. I thought I was being smart about it. So I went to, I'm in Canada. So in Canada here, we can do like a search. Anybody can do them on a Court of King's bench. And so I did this search, and it came up with a whole bunch of results, which I was not expecting. Like, if I would do a search on myself, all I would see in there would be that I had filed for divorce with my first husband. So to see like 12 things come up was very unsettling for me. And you can go in and kind of like click on them and then look and see the details of them. So there was things like financial claims, and I found 2 different files regarding women's names. And so that was odd as well. And I looked into them, and one of them was ongoing. There were dates in there. And the other one was referring to a child, like they both had children. So I was confused. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, or I'm going to give him an opportunity to explain this all. So I reached out to him and I said, before we meet, I'd like to have a chat on the phone, because we hadn't talked on the phone at that point. And he said, sure. So then he called me, and that call was probably, oddly enough, what ended up becoming a big part of the hook for me. Because when he called, first of all, he had the ability throughout our relationship to change his tone of his voice to suit the situation, which was odd. So when he talked to me that first time on the phone, he had like this super deep, like Sean Connery, very attractive type of voice. And it kind of like sucked me in. It was like mesmerizing to listen to him talk. And so I explained to him that I'm like, I'm really sorry. I just really felt like I should go and do this search. Nothing against you. And I'm trying to explain away why I was looking him up. But I said, like, I looked you up and I found these things. Can you explain them to me? And he dives right into this huge, long, detailed explanation, like point by point. And it took me, it kind of rattled me a bit that he was able to do that so clearly on the spot without any kind of hesitation. It's like, so then I had no reason to doubt him, because like I'm not used to being around people that can just lie on the fly. So I thought, like, if he's saying all these things so quickly, they must be true. So he would say, like, his ex had got his credit cards frozen when they had their split, so he couldn't pay things. So then he got sued, but now things are better. And if I look, I'll see that he doesn't have anything recent. So that kind of explained the financial claims. And then he said, though, that he had to admit that while his profile shows he has a 6-year-old, or insinuates that he is a 6-year-old, it's actually, the child is actually 6 months old. So of course, your heart kind of jumps and you're like, 6 months old, like, this guy's just got out of a relationship with somebody then. And he also explained that was the other woman on the website. So he actually had children with 2 separate women, and one of them was baby. And he immediately went into this whole dialogue or monologue of how these women were crazy, and he only wanted to help them, and his goal in life was to make their lives better, and they turned around and stabbed him in the back, and they were out to get him now. And the baby's mother hadn't even told him when the baby was born, so he didn't even know about this child's birth, and now he was fighting to get at least visitation. He didn't have any visitation, and just such a victim playing response that he had, and my heart just went out to him. And I'm just thinking, wow, this poor guy, all he wants is to be a father and to be involved in his kids' lives, and these women are letting him. And this is just a terrible situation. I've never heard of anything like I was so sheltered. I'd never heard of anybody having a situation like this. And then he was saying things like, I'm so glad you asked me about this. It just shows that you're an open person. You're not judgmental. It's so rare in a woman. I really respect that about you. So he's doing that kind of, it's like word love bombing that he was doing.
So right here, he has taken a situation that should have been working against him, and he's flipped it around in such a way that he's not only, masked the truth of this situation, he's now also made himself out to be a victim of people. So it's not just a reversal and let it go. It's a reversal and, hey, you should have all of this empathy for me. And on top of that, he's buttering you up. So it's like this flip, boom, get you on his side of things. So now you're on his side of the fence, and he's going to say all these nice things. It's a real interesting kind of move and flip. When he's in this corner, he's able to make it into a net positive for him in this situation to really bait you in and be locked in here.
Yeah, which is so disturbing when you think about it, when you say it like that. And I came away from it just feeling such empathy for him. And because I was such a trusting person and believing everything that he said, I really was almost hooked in completely by that point. And when my parents later also did their search and they saw the same things I did and they brought them to me, and then they couldn't understand it, I had a hard time explaining it to them how he was just a victim. This was his situation. This is how his life had turned out. And because I didn't have the ability to come up with all these lies on the fly like he had done, I couldn't convince them the same way he had convinced me, and it created a wedge between us immediately. Became the first wedge between me and my parents when they saw the flags and how they approached it and how I saw the flags and how I was manipulated into, like you said, seeing them as almost like a win for him, that he was able to use them to his advantage, which is so bizarre. But then, so I kind of then I thought about it and took the view that I was going to be like a good Samaritan here. I was going to be that person that he needed. I was going to walk with him and hold his hand as he walked through these nightmares that he had been forced into, not by his own will, but by the doings of these women. And I was going to do whatever it took to show him that not all women are crazy. Because in my worldview, most women aren't crazy. And most women are good-hearted and genuine and Christian women that I was used to. And I was going to make sure that he understood that not all women are crazy. He just happened to get a few of them. So I thought, I was committed to that, and he just needed time to heal, time to get better, and we were going to have this great relationship. So things escalated quite quickly from there. So we met on the Christmas day at some coffee shop, and when I saw him that first day, so of course he was late, which would become a pattern, and he walked in the door and I was already seated. And another thing, he had told me he was taller than he was. He's actually quite short. So it was just a little thing, but it's well, why would you lie about how tall you were? So there was that. And then I wasn't attracted to him really. I didn't find him physically attractive, but he just had this persona about him that was very confident and made me feel safe. And he would walk into a room and it's he owned the room because he just took charge. Super intimidating. And we ended up, he had a place, so kind of talking about geography a little bit, that's important to the story. I lived about half an hour from a major city, and he had a house about half an hour in the opposite direction of the city. But then he had a farm about 2 hours away, and that's where he mostly lived. This other house that he had was a house he was going to live in with the baby's mother, but they split up. So he just had this house temporarily. So we would spend a lot of time at that house close to the city for the first couple of months that we were getting to know each other. And there would be a lot of, we would visit when my kids weren't with me and when his kids weren't with him. And it quickly went to, he invited me out to see his farm. So it was probably about a month after we met that I drove out to his farm, which was 2 hours from my house. And when I got there, he wasn't there yet, of course. So I waited for him to show up. And then when he did, he shows up in this really decrepit grain truck. And he had told me while we were chatting online that his net worth was in the millions. So he had all this money, but it was tied up in this divorce issue that he was going through with his ex. So that was misleading. I found out later on. But so he was showing me around the yard and telling me, like, this is such a beautiful place. It's so quiet. It's children's paradise. And it's so serene and beautiful. And you can hear the birds, listen to the birds. And so we're walking around. He's showing me his place. And then we went into his house. And the house was like 150 years old. I'm not exaggerating that. It had dirt basement and dirt walls in the basement. And he didn't show me the basement until after quite a long time. But the second I walked into the house, I said to myself, there's no way I'm ever living in this house. Like it with the smell of, it was like a mixture of mold and cat urine and things I couldn't identify. It hit me so strongly. And I'm like, I could never live in this house. So he shows me around the house and I'm just thinking to myself, like, this is, I guess, okay for a bachelor and a couple of kids on and off, but I'm certainly not something I would ever see myself living in. And then we started talking. He's like, this is just temporary. I'm planning to build a house. Once I get through my divorce settlement, I'm going to have all this money. I'm going to build this big, huge dream farmhouse. And like, okay, well, that's great. I can see how that's feasible. And then within probably about a month after that, he wanted to see my house. So he had driven out one day and he told me that a house says a lot about a person, which was interesting because in retrospect, like his house should have said told me a lot about him, but I didn't really read it that way. I was more nervous that he was going to look at my house and make a judgment about me that wasn't favorable for some reason, even though my house was wonderful and clean and just one super. But anyway, so he came out to see my house and he's kind of looking around like as if he's doing a real estate appraisal on it. And then he told me that my house was good. It was adequate. So it kind of gave me a stamp of approval. And then he told me at the end of our visit that he loved me and that he saw me as being perfect, which was his only concern, because he was concerned because he didn't see any red flags in me. And that was weird for him. So it was kind of like a backhanded I love you compliment, which was kind of odd, but and in retrospect as well, it's like he had to look at my house to see what I had to offer before he would emotionally move forward further. So things really were moving along very quickly, even though it was like to me, it was a long distance relationship being a 2-hour drive, but we would see each other very regularly every other weekend. The whole weekend I would go out. The only time he came to my house was that one time and then one other time later. So it was always me driving out to his place and he would be busy doing a whole bunch of farm stuff. And I would generally tag along with him and we would spend the time together. And that gave me an opportunity to see what life was like for him out there. And it was interesting because his parents lived a mile down the road from him, but he kept me hidden from them the whole first 6 months of our relationship. And I would often ask him, like, when am I going to meet your parents? And he would just deflect and, oh, well, my parents didn't like my other women in my life, so I'm not going to rush it. And I'm a very private person and I don't like to share things, would be generally his response. So I didn't push it. And it would just be me and him hanging out on these weekends. So he wouldn't have any friends over. of course, I wouldn't bring anybody with me. So very isolated type of interactions. And he started asking me to help him with the driving for the 6-month-old. The 6-month-old mother lived in Winnipeg. So that was a 2-hour drive from his farm. And he painted a picture that it was very inconvenient for him and he hated to deal with her. It was just such a problem every time. And they always had conflict. And like, perhaps I could help with the driving. So wanting to help and people please and make his life easier because he had such a horrible, sad situation, I agreed to help with the driving, which often did mean that I had to take time off work and I did it around when I would have my older children. So they weren't impacted by any of this. And this whole time they still weren't even aware that I was dating anybody. And so the first time I went to the child's house to pick him up, hadn't told her that I was coming, which was odd to me. So I go to her door and say, I'm here to pick up, I'll call him Chris. I'm here to pick up Chris. And of course, she takes one look at me and says, I'm going to call my lawyer. So she slams the door and I'm waiting. Finally, she opens her door and says, my lawyer says not to give Chris to you. You can leave, or something to that effect. So I go back to my car and I call my ex and I said, I can't, she's not letting me take the baby. So he says, okay, well, I'm going to call the cops, but they're probably not going to do anything. So I'm probably going to have to come there. And in the meantime, can you just wait there? So I'm fine. I'll wait here. So I'm waiting there. And the baby's mom comes out to my car after a while. And I open my window as she's approaching and she starts yelling at me. She's like, what are you doing with this guy? You shouldn't be with him. He's crazy. He steals things from people. He gave me a laptop and then he wanted it back. He sleeps around with people. He stinks. His armpits are smelly. He has bad breath. And it's like, she just goes into this, like, really trash talking him. But the weird thing was, she was so out of control that she was literally, it looked like she was almost like foaming at the mouth. It was really odd. So because he had prepped me in advance for thinking that she's like some crazy lunatic, that became my interpretation of what she was saying. I dismissed it all as, this is the crazy ex. She's doing exactly what he predicted she would do, telling me that he's nuts and he's financially unstable and all these things. So I wasn't really surprised by anything that she told me, but her presentation was so foreign to me that I didn't want to have anything to do with her and I didn't take her seriously. So the rest of that, I guess, story isn't really that important. Like, he ended up driving out and getting Chris, and the police did show up and they did talk to me, and it was really uncomfortable. I've never had any kind of police involvement in my life other than like a couple pullovers. But so for the police to come there for a custody issue, and then they came and tapped on my window and asked me who I was and why I was there, I was petrified. Like, I didn't want to have anything to do with police issues. It was very unsettling for me. And then afterwards, when I was driving home and my ex had called me and I explained to him the whole situation again. And he was just, his response was, see, that's what I have to deal with. And it just felt like, that's such a weird response. Like, I thought maybe he would say, I really appreciate you doing that. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but it wasn't anything like that. And I kind of went like, that's kind of weird. I just feel like he should have really recognized more what I had done. And because I'm a people pleaser, like, I want to get a little bit back and like, yeah, you did a good job, but he didn't give that to me. So I thought it kind of left me feeling like maybe I didn't do enough. Maybe I had failed somehow. I didn't get the baby. So he had to drive out. So this was still a big problem for him. So moving forward, I told my parents about my ex shortly after that. And it was kind of like, oh yeah, Mom, like, remember you had set me up online. I ended up meeting some guy and we've been seeing each other and I really like him and he's into the same books I am and he has the same beliefs and he has 2 kids and we really get along and have similar interests. And that was kind of the way I painted things to them. And then when I mentioned that he lived 2 hours away, they got concerned because I had a very close relationship with my parents, and they were living maybe 5 miles out of our small town from me. So my older children did see them a lot, and we spent a lot of time together. So they were concerned that if I got really invested in this relationship, that I was going to move. And because of course, him being a farmer, he's not going to move where I am. I would have to move to where he is. So I could tell they were a little bit hesitant, but I kind of just dismissed it and like changed the topic. Let's talk about something else. Okay, so at about this time, it was probably March. I had only been seeing my ex for 3 or 4 months, and he said that he had this person in his life that was a real mentor to him and a type of father figure. And he had a lot of respect for this person, and he really wanted me to meet this person who was also a professional counselor. So he said, because he felt like, oh, I was so perfect, and maybe he was just missing problems that I had or the red flags that I had, I should go see this person, and this person would have like an objective viewpoint of me. So I agreed to meet this person, this counselor, and I drove out to his office, which was about an hour from my house and an hour from the ex's farm in the middle. And he was an older man, and he was also somebody who kind of headed up a group of people that my ex would meet with on Sunday mornings. And they would talk about the same books, supposedly, that I had been interested in. And when I met this man, he was very soft-spoken and had a great big smile. And he told me that my ex had been through a lot and had really had a hard life. And he had these emotional wounds that he just needed time to heal from. And he told me that there's different kinds of emotional issues. You can be emotionally immature or emotionally wounded. And he said that my ex was just emotionally wounded, and I could help him with his healing process. I just needed to be patient. And if I would understand that he had been through a lot and just needed time, that would be a role and something that I would have to offer my ex. So I see that now as this was like a flying monkey, right? Like he was someone that my ex had presented to me early in the relationship as kind of a spokesperson on behalf of him, advocating for him. And I have no idea to this day how he got this guy to say those things, because those words really did negate any red flags that I still would have been clinging to, because they were all dismissed as, oh, he just needs time. He just needs healing. Just stick with him and it'll all be better. He'll be the person that he says he's going to be. So going forward then, with that guy's stamp of approval, because he also said I was great for him. He saw me as a garden full of flowers, and he had these whimsical terms for me. So our relationship just kept going forward. And shortly after that, one weekend after, when I was leaving my ex's farm, he presented me with a wedding cake topper. It kind of just thrust it into my hands as I was leaving and said, "This is for you. Open it on your way home." And I did. And it was a wedding cake topper. So I was immediately like overcome with emotion and thinking, oh, he does want to marry me. We're going to have a future together, and he's committing to me. And it was just so powerful, and I was full of optimism. And shortly after that, my parents, of course, wanted to meet him. So Easter was coming, and my older children weren't going to be with me for Easter weekend, but my family usually has big gatherings with my brothers. And so we were going to have lunch together, and they said I should invite my ex. And that was the one other time that he had come to my house. So he picked me up and we went there, and it was awkward introductions and so on. And then we were enjoying a meal, and my sister-in-law works in the agriculture industry, and she had made some comments about some issues that farmers in her area were having. And my ex got really vocal about it, and he was telling her that those farmers didn't know what they were doing, like that they shouldn't be doing that. That's not the proper way to do it. And I was really embarrassed that he was disputing what she was saying, and it just felt really awkward for the rest of the dinner, and we left fairly early after that. And on the way home, I remember just saying to him, like, that was, like, why did you have to say that to her? Maybe she has a different experience, because the farmers that she knows are in a different area than yours, and they might have different things that they do. And he's like, well, they're just so ignorant. And he just dismissed it as if they just didn't know what they were doing and he knew best. And it was just really unsettling for me, because I'm not used to seeing conflicts like that. Like, even that degree of conflict, I'm not used to. So it was awkward. And of course, that set the stage, or set the tone for my family, thinking this guy is not really the right person for me. And then a couple weeks after that, I finally introduced him to my 2 older children. And they were shy towards him, but just kind of surprised, I think, that I was seeing somebody, because I hadn't dated anybody since I had split up with their father. And it was like 3 years later, but they were open to the idea of me seeing somebody. And then I had a very big flag come up, which was May long weekend. So that would have been about 6 months after meeting him. And we had been I had met him out by his farm, and then we were driving to the city to drop Chris off, or the baby off, because he had the baby for some time, and we were going to go do this adventure together. He had asked me to do an adventure where we would work on a tractor that he had to fix in some remote area. So as we're approaching the city, there's a whole bunch of police cars on an off exit ramp. And as he sees the cars, he kind of mutters something under his breath. I'm like, what? Like, it's probably just a check stop. Like, it's a long weekend. It's just going to be a check stop. No big deal. It'll just slow us down a couple minutes. And as we get closer, he starts getting tense. And so, of course, we get pulled over, because they're pulling everybody over, and they ask for his driver's and registration. And he says something like to me, he says, you should have been driving. But he gives the policeman his paperwork, and then we sit there and wait, and we have the baby in the back, and he's kind of getting antsy. And the time's ticking, and I know that we're supposed to be dropping him off soon. So the whole situation, I'm starting to get a little tense, because we've got the ex to deal with. Now we're waiting for the police. We're late. I like to be late. And he tells me that he's let the baby's mom know that we're going to be late. So, okay, that's dealt with. And the policeman comes back and says, are you aware that you don't have a valid driver's license? And of course you're wrong. Check again. Ask somebody else. So the policeman says, I double checked. Like, you don't have a valid driver's license. We're going to have to impound your vehicle here, and you're going to have to get another ride. And he's like, I want to talk to somebody. So he gets out of the truck, and he goes with the policeman to go talk to somebody else in some van. And there's media around. I don't know why there was media, but there's media around. And then he comes back after a while, and he says, they're taking the vehicle. The baby's mom's going to come here and get him in a few minutes, so you can give the baby to her, and I'm going to deal with this. And he disappears. So I'm there, I'm getting the baby out and getting his stuff, and the baby's mom comes, and she gets the baby, and she's like, look what I told you, he's trouble. And and she's screaming at me, and everybody's looking at me, and the media are there, and the police tell her to be quiet, and she disappears with the baby, and I'm just sitting there. I didn't know what to do. And then my ex comes back, and he says, I got to deal with this. I'm going to have to go figure something out with the court, because maintenance enforcement, who deals with child support, they had suspended his drivers. And he said, I had paid them. They shouldn't have just suspended my drivers. I'm going to have to deal with this. And he starts walking down the exit ramp, like through the grass, and just leaves. And I'm sitting at the truck going, I have no idea what to do. So the policeman said that we needed to get our stuff out of the vehicle, and I was going to be leaving soon. So I gathered some things and called my brother and said, do you have a truck that we can borrow? And he didn't, and he was concerned, and he ended up meeting me at a gas station nearby, and I ended up getting a rental car and going and getting my ex from the courthouse, because he had somehow got there, and we drove back to his farm in this rental car. And it was just this huge avalanche of issues that I had no idea how to deal with, and felt like, how does all this drama happen to somebody? And he seemed to deal with it in such a stride that it was surreal to me. Like, he didn't break down, and he didn't like scream at anybody. He wasn't swearing. He was just like dealing with it. Like, just, okay, well, I'm going to walk to the courthouse, and I'm going to deal with this. And this is not my fault. This is maintenance enforcement's fault. And I thought that I had paid it, and I guess it just didn't get processed. And I'm going, like, this is a lot of stuff, but he surely shouldn't have to go through this all by himself. So I'm going to, I guess, stick it out for him and hope this is a one-off. And so that was kind of my approach to that situation, which should have been the world's biggest red flag. So before we got engaged, as things were moving along quickly, we started talking about the house more, because I kept going out to his house, and he kept telling me that we were going to he was going to build a house. And it came to the point where one time we were near the city, and he said, oh, like, there's a house nearby here that would be my dream house. Do you want to go check it out? Sure. So we go to this house in a random area, and pulls up to the driveway, and he's like, let's go ask them if we can have a tour of their house. I'm like, oh, sure, this sounds like a cool adventure. So he goes and knocks on the door, and the woman answers, and he explains that we love their house, and can we look at the house? And she says yes, and they graciously show us their house, and we visit with them for a while, and he explains that this is the house he wants to build, and these are our plans are to eventually build this house on his farm, and just major future faking. Like, if this is not future faking stamped, I don't know what is. And I have the house is literally right there. This is the house we're going to have. So that I keep going forward in our relationship, envisioning this house, and he's painting this picture of being on the farm and children playing outside and just beautiful life. And there's these little things that pop up. Like, he had a friend of his showed up one evening while he was out on the farm working, and I was preparing a meal for us, and this woman shows up and says, like, who are you? Why are you here? And I'm going, who are you? And why are you here? And she says, oh, she's a friend from way back. And I say, well, I'm his new girlfriend, and she got angry and left. And then I asked him about it, and he's like, oh, she's crazy. She's just my friend from way back. I used to coach her daughter in sports, and she keeps in touch with me, but like, it's just a friendship. I don't know why she thinks there's something more. There isn't. And so he just dismissed it. And going forward, we did get engaged shortly after that. And it wasn't anything magical or anything. Just, we had been on the farm for the weekend, as we always were. And at the end of the weekend, he took me up on the roof of a building, and it was a full moon, and it seemed so romantic. And he asked me if I would share in his adventure with him. And I agreed to do that. Then oddly, the next day, the ring he had given me, he told me that it was actually the same ring he had given the baby's mother, but then she gave it back to him when they split up. And he said if I really wanted, he could get me a different ring. But of course, me wanting to be people pleaser and not cause any work or financial issue, I just said, oh, like, it's fine. I love the ring. I'll just keep this ring. Even though it was so weird that he gave me the same ring, which should have been another flag probably. And then we started talking about the marriage and getting married. And I told my parents, and of course, they were very upset. And we had a bit of a disagreement. And when we would disagree about my ex, I would usually mention to my ex that I had a conversation with my parents. And he would say things like, oh, they won't understand the depth of our relationship. We have a special relationship that other people don't get because it's so rare. And there's no way you're going to be able to explain it to them. It's just going to be me and you against the world. And that's just something that we're going to have special just for us, like this close relationship. And I wanted to believe things like that. It just sounded, he presented it as so with such conviction that I completely bought it. I was like, yeah, we do have this deep bond. We've already been through these issues, these situations, and we've come through them, and he's going to be a better man for them. And I was very almost like brainwashed by him quite early. So when my parents would say things that were unsettling, I kind of had him talking in the back of my head saying, they're not going to get it. They're not going to understand our relationship. So I would dismiss things that they were saying. And it created a wedge between us for sure. And he also convinced me that we should elope, which we initially weren't going to do, but we did end up eloping within 8 months of meeting and about a month after we had got engaged. And he was like, oh, well, we'll quickly get married. That way you can move out to the farm with your kids before the new school year starts. And then we can do like a formal wedding ceremony later. So very practical way of looking at it. So I agreed to do that. And my parents were very upset when they found out that we had eloped. And when I told my children that I was when I had told them that I was engaged and getting married and we were going to be moving, they were really upset. And it was hard, super hard for me to tell them because they were going to be moving away from the life that they knew. But I was so convinced because I was driving the baby back and forth so often that 2-hour drive's not really that bad. 2-hour drive, we can easily do that. We can still go out to go see your grandparents all the time. You're still going to see your dad every other weekend. Like nothing's really going to change with that. And then I'm like, the upside, we're going to have this beautiful place in the country and the farm, and you're going to have all this space to practice your sports, and you're not going to have to worry about the neighbors, and it's going to be so lovely. And I'm kind of painting for them the picture that had been painted for me. So I'm trying to present it in that manner. And they were young enough. They were like 8 and 10. So I felt like they were young enough that they would be able to adapt to new schools. So moving forward, I started working on getting my house for sale, putting it on the market. And we were married at this point, but I hadn't moved yet. There's kind of like a week there, a week or two where I was packing and so on. And during that week, I had gone out with my kids to the farm to show them the farm and show them around. And when I got there, there were other children there. And I asked my ex about them, and he said that he was watching them for this woman that had showed up mysteriously earlier on before we were engaged. And she had needed someone to watch these two girls. So, okay. And then I went in, met the girls, talked to them, and they said, oh yeah, like we're staying here for night, but our mom it was, and I said, oh, like that, how did that go? And they said, oh yeah, it was fine because our mom showed up later on. What? Your mom was here? I did not know any of this. So I go stomping out to the backyard where my ex was working on some equipment. Why did you not tell me that this woman was here for a night? And he gets, oh, you're overreacting. It's no big deal. She just showed up. I don't know why she did that. She left within a few hours, and I didn't see why it was a big deal, why I would have to tell you. And I'm like, okay. So I was very unsettled, but I didn't know what to do with this information. I didn't want to appear as crazy. I didn't want to appear as overreactive because I know that totally turns him off. At this point, we're married. I don't want to cause a scene in front of all the kids. So I just let it go. And it's eating at me because I just feel like in my gut, like, this is not right. Like, why would he not at least send me a message and tell me this woman showed up and I don't know what to do with her. I try to get her out and nothing like that. It's just no information. So I thought that was very disrespectful to me as well, and tried to dismiss it, which I would do with a lot of things that would come up. And I move out with my kids and sell my house quickly. I had quite a bit of equity in my house, so I got that money, and the financial abuse started almost immediately. I started doing the bookkeeping for my ex. And as I was doing the bookkeeping, I, of course, discovered that he really didn't have any money at all. All he had was a ton of credit card debt and other kind of debt, farm debt, and he didn't even have a credit card, which I didn't know. And I remember one day we were having lunch or something and the phone rings and he's talking to somebody on the phone, and it ends up being a lawyer that he had hired to get more custody of the baby. So, and then he says, oh, I need your credit card. He says to me, I need your credit card. I have to give him a retainer. Can you get it for me right now? It's like urgent. I'm like, okay. So I get my credit card, give him the numbers. I'm like reading the numbers to him, and he's reading them to the lawyer, and hang up the phone. I'm like, how much are you putting on there? Oh, like $10,000. I'm like, okay. Luckily, I actually had a credit card because I had stellar credit. I had a $30,000 limit on my credit card at this point and didn't ever carry a balance. And I was like, how are we going to pay for that? And he's like, oh, I'm going to go deliver some grain this week and I'll easily have that money. That's not going to be a problem. Of course, the week goes by and no, there's no money. And then I go to the mail a couple of weeks later because I've now also become in charge of getting all the mail and dealing with all that stuff. And I remember driving down the road and I'm opening the mail. I open my credit card statement and like, I just get flooded with like dread because he's maxed out my credit card. And because I can see on there the transactions like 10,000. I guess he has a really good memory. So he must have remembered the numbers as I was reading them to him or written them down shortly after and used them for farm expenses. So he goes to buy fertilizer or whatever, puts it on my credit card. And I, of course, asked him about this. Like, what is with my credit card? You can't just use my credit card and not let me know. And how are you going to pay this? Like, what's that? It's not a big deal. His answer is like, no, it's not a big deal. I'll just pay for it. I'm going to go deliver grain and I'm going to get the money and I'll pay for it. It's like, what's the big deal? Plus, you have equity in your house. You're getting that money any day. You can just use that money to pay the credit card. Like, well, I thought we were going to use the money for my house to build a new house because that was the plan. And he's like, well, I'll just get other money for that. There's always money coming in. The way with a farm is that ebbs and flows how you have cash flow. So that was his explanation. You have to understand the way of the farm. You have to get used to this way of life. You have to get used to there being money and then there being no money. It comes and goes. Like, okay, like, I guess so. I'll try to get used to this new way of life. And at the same time, he had me busy working on house plans. So he says, okay, like, you can go meet builders in a nearby town and you can get working on blueprints for a house. So I was doing that and I was really invested. I spent a lot of time and energy. I'm measuring stuff out. I'm drawing up plans, meeting with builders. And once in a while, I would meet with my ex and say, like, here's where we're at. What do you think? And he would have some input. And we were really moving forward with that to the point where the plans were finalized and we got an engineer stamp on them. And I let my ex know, and I said, they've got the stamp on them now. And I said, they're going to need money to pay for the engineer stamp before they'll release the blueprints to us. And at that point, he goes, well, I was thinking maybe instead of building a house, maybe we should just build like a garage for now, because we're going to build a garage eventually anyway. So we'll just build a garage, and then we can have rooms on above it, and we can have the older kids live out there above the garage, and it'll be way cheaper. I can just do it myself. We won't need all the plumbing and all that stuff, and we'll do it that, and we'll use whatever money we have. Like, I don't want to be living in this farmhouse any more than I have to be, but he made it seem so logical. Like, the ground was frozen by now. We couldn't really dig a basement, and okay, I guess so. So in retrospect, I don't believe he ever intended to build the house. I think that was just a hook and future faking that he had done right from the beginning on purpose. There was never any intent to build the house. It just kept me emotionally invested and kept me busy during that first 6 months we were married, because I was working on it and that was kind of my goal. So really diabolical that he was doing that. And within that first year of marriage as well, there was one morning I was going to be going out to the city to pick up the baby. And right before I was about to leave, my ex goes, oh, I have some papers I need you to drop off today in the city. And I respond, okay, like what? Like, give them to me now. I need to get going soon. I don't really have time for all this stuff, because it's always very scheduled with drop-offs and pickups. And he says, oh, I want you to apply for this advance from the government for farmers. It's $100,000 advance. And because I had such good credit, and he said, oh, I've already got this advance in different years. You can only get it every few years, so you can get it now this year. And I'm like, okay. And something's nagging at me and going, I shouldn't really be doing this without more information. But he's standing there and he's going, I need you to do this. And I'm thinking, I need to leave. And I'm like, fine, just give me the papers. So he gets all these papers. Like, I've already filled it all out. All you have to do is sign it and drop it off. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not a farmer. Like, I don't think I'm going to get this money anyway. And I'm kind of hoping I don't, because I don't want to have to deal with another loan. And so I sign it and I drop it off, and I get the baby and go home. And I don't know how, but a couple of weeks later, check comes in the mail in my name for $100,000 from this program. And of course, he takes the money and spends it all right away. And I'm like, well, how do you repay it? What's the process here? And he says, oh, well, when the crop comes in, they're supposed to deduct it at the elevator, and they pay it off that way. So I'm feeling okay. Like, then, okay, there's a way that this is automatically repaid. So I shouldn't really have to worry about this. Trust me, that whole event is still a thorn to me, but I'll try to circle back to that. And he also, within that first year, goes, oh, we need a new car. I don't like the car that you brought into the relationship. It's just this Toyota little car. We're making it bigger. We're going to have kids. We're going to have a bigger family. We've already got these 4 kids. We need a Suburban. Like, oh, can we get a used one? Like, so we get a used one, but he doesn't like that. It's not fancy enough for him. He wants a black one, because everything he has to be black, because he's very fixated on Batman, and he thinks he's like a vigilante. I'm not kidding you. And he has this whole persona. Everything has to be black. All his vehicles need to be black. He's already got a black truck. He's got a black car. Now he wants black Suburban. So we go to the dealership. We can get a black Suburban, but it's going to be $80,000 over 7 years. He tells me to sign the paperwork because I still have good credit at this point. And I realized when he brought me to the dealership and he told me to drive it, he's like, make sure you can drive it and you're going to feel comfortable driving it through a drive-through. Like, okay, fine, I'll drive it. Like, it's a bigger vehicle than I'm used to, but it's fine. And I wanted to please him and be like, not be like, oh, I can't drive this through a drive-through. I'm like, yeah, I can drive this thing through a drive-through. I can handle this thing. So, and I don't want to say to him in front of the car salesman, I don't think we should buy this. I felt like he was just monopolizing the whole transaction. So I signed the paperwork, and it's going to be like $800 a month for 7 years. I didn't even know you could get a 7-year car loan. Apparently you could. And we drive out with our beautiful, overpriced, very expensive Suburban, which was also going too tiny to him because it's now coming out of my bank account. And I'm going to have to cover somehow $800 a month. So at this time, I initially, throughout the whole relationship, I was working full time, mostly remotely, thank goodness. So when I moved to the farm, I was able very easily to just move my job and work remotely. But things started changing where he was putting a lot of responsibilities on me. So I had to cut down my hours to part-time because I was driving the baby around. He had me driving all over the place for farm supplies. I would be working and he'd be, oh, I need you to go run off to wherever an hour away and go get me these farm supplies. I need them right now or there's going to be a crisis and the whole crop is going to be ruined. And so I would run off and get these supplies and then I would have to pay for them. And he would have me, I would also be driving all the other kids around, and it was a real shift in responsibility. And it was like he thought I needed to be his farmhand as well as doing everything in the house and doing his bookkeeping and like all the meals and working somehow. And he even had me running a combine that first year, and I was petrified. I had never driven farm equipment, large machinery like that. And his machinery was all decrepit and it would break down and get stuck. And he would get frustrated and angry. And I felt like I was on pins and needles from very first year because I was trying so hard to please him and it was impossible. And so I'm trying to also juggle the financial load because I had to pay for all the household stuff because he didn't have a credit card. He had no credit. The only income that he had was from the farm, and he seemed to use that for farm expenses and have absolutely nothing left over. So I'm now having to cover the Suburban payment, all the household stuff. And then he switched over all his insurance on all his farm equipment into my name, which at the same time made it so I had now had to also pay all of his insurance premiums on everything coming out of my bank account or on my credit card. So, and then of course, because he had maxed out my credit cards and I had that one that was $30,000 limit, I had another one that was 10. He maxed that one out. I was having $700 to $800 a month in interest on credit cards that I was also having to pay. It was unbelievably challenging. And then, of course, I get pregnant within a year of being married, which was exciting because I did want more children. I was in my early 30s, I think, at the time, to mid, and he wanted children. He always said he wanted a quiver full of children, which is a weird phrase, but he always said that, and it sounded romantic to me for some reason. And when the baby, I was about 8 months pregnant, and we were working in a garage, and we had been trying to do it on our own because he was unable to get people to come and build it for him in any capacity. Like framers, roofers, nobody would come and work on it, which I thought was odd at the time. But I realized later on that it's because he had such a bad reputation for not paying people that he couldn't hire anybody to come and do it. So we were doing it. Literally, it would be me, him, and the older kids working on this garage. So when I was 8 months pregnant, we were at the point where we were shingling the roof, and it was a really steep pitch, like more than a normal house. It was like almost like a steeple church type of pitch on the roof. And he had rented a telehandler, which is like a big forklift with a really high boom that went up like 35 feet. And he's like, okay, well, I can't find anybody to drive this thing, so you're going to have to operate this boom, and he's going to go up in a basket and shingle the roof. And I'm like, I don't want this responsibility. And he's telling me, like, if you lower or raise the boom by 1 inch too much, you could, like, hit the roof, put a hole in the roof, or you can knock me over and he would fall off the roof. So it's super high risk issue. But we do it for a week and we get through it. But at the end, there's a piece that he can't quite reach. Like, I don't know what you're going to do with that piece, because I can't drive this machine and have you in the basket moving to where this spot needs to be filled in. So he's like, okay, well, I have an idea. He says, you're going to go up on the roof in the basket, and I'm going to drive the telehandler on the ground and maneuver it in this mud to get you to the spot that you need to go. Like, I cannot believe this is happening. So I'm 8 months pregnant, and he has me up on the roof. I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. And I get it done. And I go to my next doctor's appointment, and needless to say, I had high blood pressure, and the doctor was checking on me, and I ended up getting admitted overnight, and just for monitoring. And while I was in the hospital overnight, I was asking my ex where he was, and he said he had gone into the United States to Grand Forks to get some windows for the garage. I'm like, what the heck? Why are you doing this now? I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm in the hospital with high blood pressure. And then he's like, well, I need to do this now before the baby comes. If the baby comes, once the baby's here, I'm not going to be able to do any stuff. I need to do all these things now. I'm so busy. I have so much stuff to do. And so he's doing this. I'm like, okay. So when I get home the next day, he's still not there. And he ends up staying another night. And so we're texting on and off. And he tells me, oh, yeah, I had to sleep in my truck because there was a storm. I couldn't get out. And I had to wait for the windows. And anyway, he finally gets home. And then I looked at his phone for some reason and found text messages that he had between him and this other woman that had magically appeared earlier on in our relationship. And it's saying stuff like, oh, did you get back home across the border? Okay. I had such fun with you in Grand Forks. I love you. I always enjoy spending time with you, blah, blah, blah. So you just go through like this feeling of like ice veins, like the phrase that my veins turn to ice or whatever that phrase is. That's what I felt in that moment. Like, it's just this wash of coldness, just chill your entire body. And it's like, what is happening? Like, what you're trying to wrap your head around reality, and like, what? Like, I was in the hospital and he's out with some woman in Grand Forks. Like, what? So I confronted him on it. I'm like, what's with these text messages that I saw on your phone? Were you in Grand Forks with this woman? And his response was, oh, I knew you were going to look at my phone. I was testing you. I wanted to see if you were going to look at my phone. And I knew if you looked at my phone and if you saw that, you would freak out. So I planted those messages there. I went on my email account. I have this app or this whatever, some way he could artificially manufacture these messages. So now he's telling me this is a fake conversation. It's not a real conversation. He's somehow he's a master of technology, and he can make fake messages on his phone. And he's like, I wasn't there with any woman. It's just, I'm teaching you a lesson. You're not supposed to look at my phone. And I'm going, like, my ground is just shifting beneath my feet. I have no idea what the heck is true at this point. I'm going, is that even possible? I'm like, can you show me how you would do that? Like, get your computer and show me how you would do that. Show me how you would make. And he's like, oh, I don't have time right now. I'll do that later. You need to just believe me. And I'm like, I have trouble believing this. And like, the gaslighting was so smooth and so quick. Like, for someone to come up with that on the fly is just so insidious and diabolical that they have the ability to do that. It just floors me. I cannot. That's why when you're in these moments and they're throwing this stuff at you and you go, they're so good at, like, I have no reason to doubt this because nobody can make this up this quickly. Like, nobody has that evil of a mind that they can come up with that on the fly. Like, anyway, but then I'm telling him, I'm like, I don't know what's worse, if you were actually cheating with her or you're telling me you're teaching me a lesson. Like, I'm 8 months pregnant and you're trying to teach me a lesson. Like, I'm not okay with either of these scenarios. So I did really was more introspective and stepping back a little bit emotionally and going like, something's not right here with all of this. This is not feeling good. I don't think this is just him needing emotional healing anymore. Like, I'm in a world that I am not prepared to be in, and I don't know how to deal with this stuff. I have no idea what to do in this situation. I don't know who to talk to. I don't have any friends or family that I can reach out to because I got myself into this mess and I felt really ashamed that I was there. I'm 2 hours away. I've dragged my older children into this place and it's a nightmare. And I don't want to admit that. And I have a lot of regrets already at this point. There had been an earlier episode where I had seen pictures on his phone of this woman. And when I had confronted him about that and asked him about the pictures, he again was super dismissed. Oh, I just she's just crazy. She sends me these pictures and I just have them on there in case I ever need to blackmail her for some reason. I'm like, what? Why would you need to blackmail her? He's like, I don't know. You never know people these days. They're crazy. I might need to blackmail her. I'm like, well, then send one of the pictures to me. I'll keep it for you and you can delete them all. You don't need to have them on your phone. He's like, I'm not sending you a picture. Like, I have no idea what you're going to do with the picture. So, like, things like that just, and I don't know I'm not going to call somebody and say, oh, like my new husband of less than a year is doing all this crazy stuff. I don't know what to do about it. I just felt like I was completely on my own in dealing with this and I had no idea what to do about it. So then the baby was born. A few weeks later, I got induced because my blood pressure did not come down, not surprisingly. And then that was around Christmas time that the baby was born. And my ex hadn't given me any money to go do Christmas shopping. I had no extra money to buy Christmas presents for anybody. And he kept telling me, oh, I'm going to get some farm income and then I'll give you some money. You can go buy presents. We'll buy them closer to Christmas. So when Christmas was coming, the baby was born literally like 2 weeks before Christmas. So I'm getting super antsy because I'm a planner and I didn't have any Christmas presents at this point. And then finally, a few days before Christmas, he's like, okay, here's some money. You can go to the city, go pick up Chris, and you can go do your Christmas shopping. Here's some money. And of course, I'll have to take the baby along, obviously. Like, I'm nursing, and the baby is, of course, coming. He's only a couple weeks old. So I head to the city, but then right before I leave, I'm getting ready to leave, and he comes in the house and he says, oh, before you go, I need you to stop at the bank on the way. Halfway through, there's a bank. I need you to stop there and do a wire transfer for me. And I go, that's not really on the way. It's going to add an extra 15 minutes. And then I'm going to have to stop halfway. And the baby's probably going to wake up. And it's just going to be, then I'm going to have an awake baby the rest of the drive. And I'm exhausted at this point. And he's like, well, I need this wire transfer done. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go drive and do it. And that's a waste of my time. I'm like, fine, I'll do the freaking transfer. So I go to this place to do the transfer. And the baby's sleeping while I'm driving. And I get there, I go in. Of course, while I'm waiting, I'm standing at the teller and the baby wakes up crying in the car seat. And I broke down. I'm standing there at the till and I just start crying. This poor teller is looking at me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just had a baby. My husband wants me to do this transfer and I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And she's just sympathetic. She just stands there, waits for me to stop crying. And then we did the transaction. While I'm there, I'm feeling just completely mortified that I'm having this breakdown. I just felt like everything was compiling all at once. And I was completely overwhelmed. So I go back to my car and I phone a friend that I hadn't seen since I got married. And I call her and I'm like, I need help. I need to do this shopping today. Can you help me? Can you meet me? And she was a lifesaver. She dropped whatever she was doing. She met me in the city, and she sat in the Suburban with the boy, Chris, and the baby, while I would run in and do a bunch of shopping. And then she would text me, oh, the baby needs to nurse. And I would go run back out to the Suburban and nurse him and then run back in. And it was surreal. But I did the Christmas shopping and went home, and we had our Christmas thing. And it just felt like such a whirlwind. Like I had no idea what I was signing up for. And just moving forward, when the baby was about 6 weeks old, I had found some texts again that my ex was having with this woman, and I had enough. And I was completely overwhelmed. I said, he needs a wake-up call. I'm going to leave. So I had left one morning while he was still asleep. I took the baby and we left. And I left him a note and said something like, you need to go get some counseling. I need changes in our relationship. And within half an hour of me leaving, he was phoning me, calling. I need to talk to you. Stop wherever you are. We need to speak. And so I stopped, pulled over to some gas station, and he met me there. And he gets out of his truck and he gets in the Suburban, and you need to get your ass back home right now. You can't do this to our family. And this is completely crazy behavior. You're acting like a nutcase. You need to get home. And he's like, we're going to talk about this when we get home. I'm like, I didn't even have it in me to fight about it. I was just, okay, fine, whatever. So I go back home feeling just totally crappy about myself. I don't even stick to my boundaries. I have no boundaries. And I went back home. And that was pretty much what life was like for the next while. If I would have friends reach out and want to meet with me, he would manipulate the issues so that I couldn't meet up with them. He wouldn't show up at the last minute, so I couldn't go out unless I would take all the kids with me. He picked a friend for me from that he knew and said I should be friends with that person. So I obliged and tried to make a friendship with her, but we didn't connect. And then I got pregnant again. I had 2 kids within 11 months of each other, and it was complete chaos. I was still driving to pick up Chris in the city, and I would have these babies with me, driving 2 to 4, like 2 hours there, 2 hours back, have these babies with me. And it was just a crazy whirlwind of a life. And then the younger baby, who I'll call Josh, had kidney issues. So he ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks when he was about 2 months old. And while I was in the hospital with him, and I hadn't been back home for that entire time, and just feeling completely torn because I was away from my other children. And my ex was sending me just horrible messages telling me I was useless to him. I had abandoned him and the kids. Nobody was helping him. My family wasn't helping him. They're so unsupportive. All they care about is me. They're just coming to visit me. They're not helping him. And just complete degradation of me. And I broke down in the hospital. I was crying. I remember sitting by the window at night and just crying and feeling torn between my responsibilities with Josh and then the other children at home, and feeling like I was just causing more trouble than I was helping with. And that issue with Josh is going to come up as a big issue later.
Yeah, so right here, so much has occurred, and you've been isolated. There's gaslighting that has gone on. There's, degradation of you as a person. You're twisted all around, believing the things that he is saying. You're on his side of the fence. There are no boundaries anymore. It's his world. You're living in his world. And with all of that, with the isolation, you're surviving day to day, minute to minute, second to second, just trying to keep everything together. And in the process of just trying to keep everything together and surviving, even though you knew, like, I should have left, it's still really hard to leave because what's going to fall apart, He has you in this thing of everything's going to fall apart. I'm pretending that his world, he's pretending that, his world needs way more tending to. where you're doing all of the work on your side with all of the things. He's not doing a thing. He's just sitting around and making you feel worse and worse and worse, and that you're ungrateful. He's financially ruining you and doing nothing. He has you twisted completely around, and you are, you sat in the hospital. You're crying. You're one moment from, at all points probably during the day, from a complete breakdown. You know, there's just, you're holding, like, it's like a cartoon where there's that water coming out of something and they're plugging it and they're plugging it, and it's just growing and it's going to explode. For you, that's your day. Your day is just plugging and holding on and hoping this giant thing doesn't explode. And when you're doing that all day, he's going around and being able to do whatever he wants, and making you think it's your problem.
That's exactly right. That's completely 100% what it was. I felt like I was treading water, and I was wearing like a parka and boots and treading and treading. And my kids are on this little raft nearby, and I'm trying to pretend I'm having fun and smiling, and everything's going to be okay. We're good. We're good. But really, I am just feeling weighed down. And my only mission in life at this point becomes to help them get through it and help them get out of all this. So there, you hear people talk about, "I'll wait till the kids are all out." Like, I was there. Once the kids are all older, out of the house, then maybe I'd be able to leave. I don't know. I was pretty hopeless about that, but I started to think like that. And there came a point where I left again, and there was more cheating, and I confronted him, and he freaked out and started throwing stuff around. And I phoned my parents in desperation, and I said, "He's been cheating on me. I need help. I need you guys to help me leave. I want to leave for the summer, and I want him to work on himself while I'm away." So they dropped everything. My parents came, my brothers came, and they brought a trailer one day when my ex was away. I think he was getting Chris that day. So I knew we had a specific amount of time, and they packed me up, and I had a friend offer her place to live because she was going to be out of town for this summer, and she said I could house it. So it was all set up. It was all perfect. And I didn't want him to reach out to my parents and have them feel like they needed to tell him where I was, because I knew he'd be phoning everybody that I knew and try to find out where I was. So I didn't tell anybody where I went that first night, and I went to a women's shelter, which was a really eye-opening experience for me. And I just felt incredibly alone being there. And I felt like out of place. I'm like, I'm not physically abused. I feel like people that go to women's shelters, in my mind, were supposed to be like battered women who have black eyes and broken bones. And I'm here with my Suburban and my kids, and I don't have any bruises. And I just felt like I was taking advantage of a situation that wasn't really meant for me. So he called me and texted me, and I caved and ended up meeting him at a park nearby the next day. And he gaslit me again, and he told me, "Oh yeah, I've been having an emotional affair with some other woman." So suddenly, magically, he's deflecting. Now there's some other person that's really the issue, and it's not the one that I know about. It's someone else. And he says, "I'll work on the marriage. I'll go to counseling, and our family needs us to be together." And he starts painting that picture that he had painted in the beginning, where we have this beautiful family on the farm, and we're together, and we're in this adventure together, and it's me and him against the world, and this whole thing he replays. And I go, "Okay, fine, I'll give you a chance." And I went back after that one night and kicked myself for it ever since, because the very next day he was back to himself. Like, he never went to counseling. He never changed anything. And I got pregnant that night again for the third time when I went back. They do these things, like, I wanted more children, but they use children as a way to hook you further. So, and then I had to bring all the stuff that I had hauled away in a trailer. He didn't even help me bring it back. Like, I had to bring it back by myself with multiple trips, and it was beyond humiliating. And then, because my family had helped me with that, and now they knew I went back, and they were, of course, like shattered and could not believe that I went back. And how could I possibly do that? And they're not going to understand. And I don't expect them to understand. And you just feel so much shame and just embarrassment and humiliation and defeat. And at that point, I just felt completely, really hopeless that I was never going to get out of this relationship. I was never going to have the courage to get out and stay away. I had my golden opportunity and I blew it. So I just felt like that was my chance. And now I'm in this life. I'm going to have to wait till my kids are all gone. And then who knows, then maybe, but now that's going to be another 18 years. Like, who knows where things will be at by then. And things just got really worse since after that, because he now knew that my family had helped me, and he really amped up the isolation. And he would tell me my parents weren't allowed to come over. They were only allowed to see my children with supervision. And if I would try to go to see them, I would be punished. There was one time where I had asked him if I could go see my parents for Thanksgiving with the kids. And I knew he was going to punish me in somehow. And he said, no, I don't think you need to go see those losers. And I said, what? Like, well, I want to go. And are you going to punish me if I go? And he ended up calling the social worker that we had with the hospital for my son, Josh, because he had been diagnosed with a chronic kidney issue when he was 2 months old. We had a social worker on our team. So he called that social worker when I had asked him if we could go to Thanksgiving with my family. And he told the social worker that I wasn't handling Josh's diagnosis well, and that he was concerned about me, and that I needed help, and that he was really concerned because the other day I had slapped Chris, and he wanted them to know that I was struggling. So then that, of course, amped and like grew into this whole thing where they had to then call Child and Family Services because my ex had said I slapped a child. And when we went to when I took Josh to his next appointment and the social worker was there, she explained the situation to me and said, like, what's your story here? And I have no idea what he's talking about. I have not slapped Chris. I've not slapped any child. I don't slap people. And I confronted my ex about it afterwards. And he was very deflective. He did not want to have the conversation, but I pushed, because this was, to me, very serious, that you're accusing me of harming a child. And he eventually told me, he said, well, how can you not remember? It just happened the other day. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I remember at the table when you slapped his hand. And then I was like floored. And then like, you kind of almost go out of body, and you're like, how is this happening? Like, he took an incident where we were sitting at the table and I tapped Chris's hand because he had reached across and put his elbow in someone's face when he reached across the table to grab a bun. And I said, I tapped his hand and I said, no, Chris, that's not how we get a bun. You ask, can you please pass the bun? So he let go of the bun because I had tapped his hand. And I'm like, that's what you said. I slapped Chris. That's going to trigger something. I'm like, you're punishing me because I want to go to my family's for Thanksgiving. This is crazy. And that became the end of our marriage, because at that point it became crystal clear to me that he would take any innocent transaction and use it against me, and he didn't care. He had no empathy. It did not matter to him. And the eggshells that I walked on after that were like a foot high. I couldn't do anything without feeling like he's going to stab me in the back with this. And it was around that time we were all in the kitchen, or me and him and one of the kids, I think, like the new baby. Now we had a girl, and she was around. I think she was playing in her room, and he took me by the throat and he forced me into a chair in the middle of a dark room. And he said to me, if you ever take my kids away from me again, you're going to see a side of me you've never seen before. And it was really menacing, and it really resonated with me. And I knew what that side already was. I had seen it. Because he had been calling CFS with Chris's mom, and the interactions they had were horrible. And I had been already witness to that for several years. So I could see that he would be horrible to me if I left with the kids. So that just further entrapped me to be there and feel like I was never going to get out of this relationship. So because of this thing that had happened with the hand slapping issue and me feeling completely on eggshells. Around that time, we also found out that Josh needed a kidney transplant. So we started getting tested for that. And turns out we were both a match, but my ex was a better match. So he was selected to be the living donor. And we put a plan in place for that where we would move to the city for a month so that we could have the transplant and then stay there for post-transplant care over the summer with all the kids. And I had taken the kids to the city and we're getting them all settled in, and we were doing the last appointments with Josh, and my ex was going to come later and meet us there. So he was coming the day before the transplant was supposed to happen. But then he was having a conversation with me over text 2 days before the transplant, and he was really angry, and he was saying that he didn't feel like I supported him because this transplant was going on now and he didn't have anybody to help him with things that he needed done, and he was all alone at home. And I'm going, well, I'm here with the kids, like we're getting ready for the transplant. I can't be in two places at once, and like I'm sorry that you feel like you're alone, but we are shifting now to this next thing that we have to deal with. And we're kind of texting back and forth until about midnight, and it was getting frustrating to me. And I'm like, I'm ending this conversation. I'm going to bed. So I go to sleep, and I wake up about an hour later, and there's like this dinging noise on my window. I'm like, what is that? Is there fireworks or gunshots? Like, what? I'm kind of in a daze. And Josh was sleeping on a mattress on the floor nearby, and he wakes up. He's like, what's going on? And like, I don't know. Just go back to bed. I'll go check. So I go down the stairs in this rental house in some neighborhood I'm not familiar with. And I see like a figure on the yard, and I panic and I phone 911. And then as the 911 person is answering, I realized that it was my ex. And so I tell the 911 operator, I'm like, oh, it's sorry, like false alarm. It's just my husband is here. And so I go to the door, I let him in, and I end the call with the 911 operator. Surprisingly, they never did send anybody. But so he's there and he's like, why is the door locked? I'm like, because it's the middle of the night and I'm in a strange neighborhood. And because on the farm, you don't lock your door. So I guess he figured I shouldn't lock the door. But I'm going, I'm in a house with all these kids. I'm going to have the door locked. And he's like, well, that's just dumb. And he's just mad. Like he just walks in mad. And he's like, I need something to eat. I haven't had anything to eat. And he goes to the fridge. He's nothing in here. He's grumbling. And I'm like, I'm going to check on Josh because he woke him up. So I go upstairs and he's upset. And he says he has a headache. I end up giving him a bath, and I'm calming him down. And the next morning, Josh had an appointment really early. So I was getting him ready to leave. And my ex was in the kitchen and he says, oh, I'm coming with you guys. And I say, well, you won't be able to come in because like COVID had just started and they had restrictions on how many people could go into the hospital. So I said, you're not going to be able to come in. There's not really much point, but okay, you can drive us. Because I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I don't really want him staying here with my older daughter anyway, because she was there at this point. She's watching the rest of the kids. So he comes with us to the hospital and we go in. And then when we came out for our appointment, I sent him a message. I said, okay, we're done now. And he goes, oh, I'm going to go talk to the transplant team. I said, well, why? You don't have an appointment. He said, well, some things change. He's like, you can go back to the house and I'll call you later when I need a ride. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I didn't want to deal with him. So I went back home. And then a little while later, the transplant coordinator called me. It's like, you need to come back to the hospital right now. He's thinking about canceling the transplant. And it's another one of those moments you don't forget where it's like, what is happening? This can't be real. So I go back to the hospital and there's me, him, the transplant coordinator, and the social worker in the room. And they say, okay, you guys need to talk this out and we need to make a decision on what's going to happen. So I say to my ex, I'm like, what is going on? And he says, oh, I just feel so alone and unsupported. I don't know if we should do the transplant now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Josh is on immunosuppressants. We're ready to move forward with the transplant. The whole team is in place. We've prepared for this. Like, what do you need right now to feel supported? And he just looks at me and he says, he's just casually leaning back and he says, well, for starters, I would need your phone password and your bank statements. And I'm like, my mind is just spinning and I'm going, okay, like I take out my phone, I open it up and I give him my phone and he's looking at it. And the women in the room that are like watching us, they're like, what does this have to do with the transplant? This is nothing to do with the transplant. And they ended up leaving shortly after. They come back in with the doctor and they tell us that they've decided they're not going ahead with the transplant because my ex needs to have a psychiatric evaluation done now. And they ended up canceling the transplant, and we've started COVID and all that jazz. And in that moment, because while we were waiting for the doctor and the two women to come back into the room, it was the weirdest experience where we're left in the room and he pulls me to my feet and pulls me towards him in an embrace, which I hadn't been hugged by him in years. And he's whispering in my ear, it's like, I've got this. I can totally talk my way out of this. Don't worry. It's me and you against the world. We can get through this. And it's this whole, again, this narrative that he's playing. And he's trying to convince me that he's still in control of this situation. And it's still going to go the way he thinks it should go. And my mind is rooted in reality. And I'm going, I don't think so, dude. Like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to talk your way out of this one. Like, this is really bad. And of course, then they come back in the room and they tell us that they're not going ahead with it. And it was somewhere in that moment where I went, I'm done. I cannot go back to this guy. I'm not married to him anymore. Like, I'm emotionally so not married to him anymore. Like, you can do all this crap to me, degrade me and tell me I'm useless and the financial abuse and exhaustion, everything else. But to do that to our child, I was done. Like, no. And another part, like for me to have to tell other people, because everybody in my family, my extended family, knew that we were having this transplant. We were ready for it. It's supposed to happen in 2 days. But now suddenly we're not having it. Well, why? Well, because my ex has suddenly wants my passwords and my bank statements and has had a change of heart and wants to make us all about him. And I'm like, I can't justify staying with him. So it was like he made my decision for me and I couldn't go back to live with him. So I decided when our 1 month in this rental house is done, I'm done. I'm not going back. And we're going to have a whole new life, basically, away from him. I didn't know what that was look like. I was going to have to figure it out in about 3 weeks. And that became a real whirlwind where I met with my parents and friend, and we made a plan and we had a safety plan. I told the RCMP and very meticulously laid out. My brother got me like some kind of burner phone that I was using to communicate with everybody to make my plan because my ex went back to the farm. And so I had kind of time to do that. But at the same time, I was trying to make our last few weeks in the city fun for the kids. So we were out doing things. And then in the evenings, I would be planning things. And my parents ended up buying a house in the town that I had lived in. And we made an arrangement where they would rent it out to me. And it just all came together so miraculously where this house was available. We got possession before I needed to leave the rental house and everything was fitting into place. And then the day came whether we had planned for me to leave. And I had a team of 6 people that were set up to go help me drive out to the farm and confront my ex if he was going to be there. We didn't know if he would be there or not. We had the police on standby if they were going to need to be called. And we ended up, he was there. I gave him a letter. I told him I'm done. And he didn't put up a fight, probably because we had everything so well laid out and I had all these people with me and he wasn't going to cause a scene in front of all of them. And we were in and out within about an hour and a half and started the next chapter, moved out to my hometown where I had been from, which was a 2-hour drive from his farm. I did consult a lawyer before I did this all. I shouldn't stress that because I didn't want to do anything illegal. And she had suggested to me that I give him the name of a parent coach, a parent mediator, and tried to figure out how we're going to have the kids see him. So I did leave that information with him in my letter. And I expected him to freak out. But then the first year that we were separated was not what I had expected. He ended up trying to hoover me and love bomb me back. So it was so intense. Like, if I hadn't been so firmly rooted in my decision to leave, I very well may have gone back. And if my mom hadn't told me right when I was leaving, she said, if we get you out and you go back again, you will lose your support team. And I knew that. I understood that. It was hard to hear, but I knew that. And I knew this was my one chance. There was never going to be a situation like this again where it was going to be this clear that I was going to need to leave. So I stayed rooted in that, and I didn't go back despite all the hoovering. Like, he was buying me all the things that I had wanted during the marriage. He bought me a laptop. He bought me a tiller. He bought me all these things. He was telling, oh, let's go to counseling, on and on and on. And within 3 weeks of me moving, he bought a house in the town where I was living, which shocked me. I said to him, well, you could have rented a house. You didn't need to buy a house. But no, he's now invested. He's going to give up the farm and he's going to have a whole new life with me. Just whatever I want, he says, he's going to do it. And I wasn't buying any of it. I wouldn't let him in my house. He's never set foot in my house. I kept that boundary, which I'm so grateful for. And because Josh hadn't had his transplant, I was also trying to play nice. So it was a thin line between keeping my boundary and trying not to rock the boat and make him mad, because I still want to have this transplant. And I felt like I was kind of being maybe manipulative, but I didn't know what else to do. So I was just trying to keep the peace to get the transplant done and move forward. And thank goodness he did, though, do that hoovering thing for that year, because the transplant did happen and he was the donor in about 9 months after we split up. But then it seemed like he thought, because the transplant was done, now we were magically going to get back together. Because in the hospital, when the transplant was done, I had a room there that I could use as a parent. And he told them that we were married and he was going to move into the room when he was released from hospital. So he put all his stuff in there and acted like we were a married couple, which was shocking to me. And then he confronted me in Josh's intensive care room and told me we needed to talk and we needed to move forward with our marriage now. And it got so aggressive that I ended up having to slip the nurse a note asking her to ask him to leave. So she did that for me. And then he became more aware that I was not going to be coming back. I guess his eyes were now open to the fact that I was not coming back. He tried one last shot at counseling with me, and I agreed to meet with a counselor that he was pushing for 1 hour. So we met online with this person, and after the call, I had called them and said, I'm not doing any more sessions with him with counseling. And she said, oh, I was about to call you. I wanted you to let you know that we are not going to be moving forward either with you guys with marriage counseling, but we recommend that you do domestic violence counseling, and that he take on this program. I can't remember what it's called, but it was like a program for the men who are abusers. So they had told him that he should do this program, and they offered me a program. And that was actually part of the turning point as well, because someone was now calling him out on it. And then I had now someone kind of in my court saying, no, this is domestic abuse. And I still don't know how they even saw that after 1 hour of us being on a Zoom meeting with them, because like it was, I don't know. It was basically a miracle that they picked up on it that quickly. And I've been with that domestic violence counselor since then. I'm still doing sessions with her. And it was an incredible program because they offered 100 free sessions. It was extended for me because I have crazy circumstances that have been happening since then. And he, of course, never did his counseling program that he was recommended to do. But then it was just a few weeks after that happened where we had a big incident where he became the person that I expected him to be the day that I left. And he had the kids and they were supposed to be coming back to me. We had made an agreement together with the parenting coach. So it wasn't like a legal agreement, but we had something that we had written up together. And when I went to get the kids, he didn't tell me they weren't there at first. He just came out of the house and he said, "Oh, we need to get back together one more time. Let's do this counseling." And I said, "No, we're not. We're done. Like, did you not hear this domestic violence? They suggested you do this program. Like, I'm done." And he's like, "Well, no, one more chance." And he's like, "This is your last chance. Will you?" And he had a ring there. He's like, I got you a ring finally." I'm like, "No, I don't want your ring. Where are the kids? I'm here for the kids." And then he finally told me that they weren't there. I didn't know where they were. And then I started to freak out. Where are the kids? And he's refusing to tell me. And he kept saying to me in this really weird voice, he's like, "You need help. You need to get help. You need to be accountable." And it was like this weird tone. And I'm like, "What?" Like, and he said I had to go to a counseling session that he had set up that night. I had to talk to this counselor. And if the counselor said I could have the children, then he would let me see them, not take them, but see them. So now he's all, "Oh, this is all in his control and he's going to be in charge of the situation." And he refused to tell me where the children were. And I ended up agreeing to speak with this counselor, not knowing what else to do. Like, when you're in these moments and you're alone and you're confronting this person, you have no resources. You're just winging it. You're on the fly, and it's so scary. And so I agreed to meet the counselor, and he left. He said, "Okay, I'll go get the kids and I'll be back in an hour or whatever. And I'm going to talk to the counselor after you talk to the counselor, and then I'll decide if you're going to get to see the kids." And he stole the Suburban when I had gone there. He took my keys, wrestled them away from me, and took them when he went to get the kids. So he leaves me with my vehicle. I have no vehicle. And I'm at his house. So I started walking down the road, and I walked to his neighbors. And it was interesting because about a week before, I had got a call from that same neighbor, and they had said, like, "We have some concerns about your ex." They had been given this story that he and I were together. We were just having some issues. We were working through them. We couldn't go visit them together because I had so much stuff to do. But he really wanted them to tell him if I knew other people in the area, because he wanted them all to know that I needed help, that I was crazy, that I was unstable. I wasn't doing well. I wasn't handling the transplant well. Smear campaign. So he had started that with the neighbor a couple weeks earlier, and they let me know. And they helped me, kind of jumping through to the end of the story, but they helped me basically grab the kids from the Suburban when he came back on the road. And it was like a surreal Netflix experience. But we get the kids, we go back to my house, and they're safe and upset, but safe. They don't know what's happening. They knew they were supposed to be coming to my house, but they didn't know what was happening and why there was this change in plans. And it turns out his parents had come and got them, and they had gone to a different town and were hidden away somewhere. And so we're consoling them. We're getting them in a routine and back in my house and trying to calm the situation. And the neighbors are still there and chatting with me. And then the police phone me, and it's about 11 o'clock at night by now. And they told me they had to come. They asked me for what had happened, and they told me they had to come and arrest me because he's now claimed that I assaulted him on the road, which I most certainly did not. And I have these witnesses that were there, and they saw him grab my arm and twist my arm. But of course, this is what these people do. They always deflect and they project and they say things that they actually do. So because we have this zero tolerance policy, they tell me they have to come and arrest me and charge me. So the police officer was very nice, though. He came, and the kids were in bed by now, and he said, "I'll just park down the street and you can just come out to my car and sit in the front, and I will I'll read you your rights, and I'll give you this paper, and I won't take you to the station or cuff you or anything." And thank goodness for that. And so that's what he did. And I was kind of just briefing him and said, if you look him up, like, he's got a sheet so long, and this is what he does. This is a pattern that he was very sympathetic. And he said, well, what you could do if he assaulted you is you could file a counterclaim. And I said, I don't know. I don't think I want to do that. I said, I really, right now, I think I just need to protect myself, and I think I need to get a protection order. So the next day, I feel like I had a choice. I could go get a protection order, or I could have done a counterclaim and said he assaulted me, but I was far more interested in protection. So I went and got a protection order the next day, which was an incredibly exhausting process for anybody that has done that. It took about 8 hours. I don't know if it's like that everywhere, but it was a long process. And I was granted the protection order for myself, but not for the children. So that would then make it harder to communicate with him. So now we had to go through like email or text, I think it was, and no phones. And it just made future interactions harder because the kids still had transitions. So of course, then I got my lawyer involved. Now we filed our petition. And I'm also going to stress that if you're in a similar situation, I personally would always say, like, try to be the petitioner, because it gave me a huge advantage with our custody trial to be the petitioner, I feel. And so I kept the kids in my care while my lawyer was sending letters back and forth to his lawyer and saying, like, hey, this is a schedule we are suggesting. And they just wouldn't reply. So I was keeping the children because he wasn't replying to my schedule. Instead, he was going to the school, because the school had started now. And he would go to the fence at recess and give them candy through the fence. It was super creepy. And the principal sent me an email and said, your ex is sending candies through the fence. This is not appropriate behavior. If he wants to see the kids, he should come to the office and ask to see them. And he was telling the kids, your mom's not letting me see you. And I'm going, I'm trying. We're sending you proposed schedules. You're not responding. So instead of responding, he ended up filing emergent motion requesting custody. So we had a motion and I had no idea what to expect. It ended up being just over the phone because we were in COVID, and it just went to 50-50, and we set trial dates. I remember the judge asking, how long do you think you're going to need for a trial? A week or 2 weeks? And we right away said 2 weeks. Sign us up for 2 weeks. So, okay. So we had a 2-week trial set for 2 years later. That's how long we have to wait. I don't know if it's like that everywhere, but probably. And in the meantime, I had the most insane 2 years of my life. And it's hard in preparing for this session or this podcast. I realized how much I forgot, because you're just going through day to day, barely surviving, trying to hang on, trying not to lose it because your kids need you, trying to think about every single avenue he's going to throw at you and how you're going to deal with that. My phone would ring and I would freeze every time my phone would ring. Panic would creep up on me, because it would be the school, the hospital, the pharmacy, somebody calling to tell me, oh, your ex has called us again and he's causing trouble. He's showed up here and he's accusing us of siding with you, or he's accusing us of not complying with the College of Physicians rules, or whatever, like causing trouble all over the place. He started trying to flex his muscles everywhere and showing that he was in control and that acting like he had the best interest of the kids. My daughter got hurt at his house once and needed to go to the hospital. She cut her chin and was bleeding everywhere. And he didn't send me a message until the next day. And he emailed me and said, oh, I had to take her to the hospital and we were in the ER most of the night. I forgot to let you know. And I'm like, what? Where were the boys? And they're I don't remember, 7 or 8 years old. And he just left them alone until deep into the night. Whereas I lived a mile down the road and I could have been there to get them. Like, things like that were happening. He would take my son to the dentist without telling me all the time. One time my son came back, the older one, and he said, oh, I got my tooth pulled yesterday when I was at dad's. And I'm, what? What tooth? And he had got some molar pulled and I never knew about it. I didn't know about the appointment. He would withhold medication because Josh's transplant requires a lot of post-hospital care and a ton of medication. That became a huge game pawn for him, where he would keep medication. The kids would come back. They'd be missing medication. I would have to send many, many emails. Where's the medication? Are you going to bring the medication? All that, on and on. The pharmacy started calling. He was harassing them, wanted more medication from them, wanted a bigger share. The pharmacist told me he wasn't able to sleep at night. He was like, the pharmacist was stressed to the max. And so I was feeling all this. I was feeling the weight of all these people that are calling me and telling me, we don't know what to do with this guy. He's harassing us. And I'm like, why are you calling me? Call the police. Like, I can't do anything about him. I had the dentist called me and they said he's caused a scene in our lobby and the RCMP had to come, and we can't care for your children anymore. You're going to have to go to a different dentist. The orthodontist, same thing. We got banned from the orthodontist office. And so it came where I didn't want to answer my phone. I would freeze when my phone rang, when it was just a complete nightmare for 2 years. He would, for 1 year, at the end of the school year, he decided he didn't want the children in the classes that they'd been assigned to. So he told the principal to move them to a different class. And when the principal wouldn't move my son, he just didn't send him on the first day of school and said, I'm not sending him to school unless till you switch classes with him. And we actually ended up going to court for it. And the judge said, like, why do you want to switch classes? And then he made up some lie and said, oh, one of the kids in that other class says he's fat. And the judge went, okay, well, we can't have that. So, okay, we'll switch classes. Like, so he won. And it was crazy. So in preparation for the trial, we had a family assessment done. And the family assessor, thank goodness, we got one that was very perceptive. Within one session of talking to him, she picked up on a lot of the issues. And she was concerned. And she had reached out to me to she was kind of wondering even how to word certain things, because she was worried that he was going to freak out. And it was odd because when she went to see him with the kids at his house, at the end of their meeting, he had given her a book. And it was a question and answer book. It's like 365 days of the year. And you're supposed to fill it out with your kid and say, like, what's your favorite color? Or who's someone that made you angry today or whatever. And then you would have a line for each kid. And he had this book that he had filled out. It wasn't in their handwriting. It was him filling it out on their behalf. So they would sit down every day when he had them and they would go through this book and then they would fill in things. It was try to trash talk me. So it would be, Mom made me mad today because she took away my toys or whatever. And it'd be like, if you could erase anything from your life, what would you erase? Oh, I would erase Mom because she made us get a divorce or things like that. Just horrible things. And he gave this to the family assessor thinking that this was going to show me as a terrible parent, but it didn't. It showed him as a alienator who's saying nothing but bad things about me. Plus, he had been calling me by my first name, not Mom, which was also weird. And so her recommendations came out in a report shortly after, and she had a lot of concerns. And she had said in her report that she was reluctant to include some things that some of the witnesses that she had interviewed had said because she was afraid of how he would retaliate against them, a retribution against them, or something to that effect. And later on, she said that she had only written that in 2 reports ever because he was so vengeful that she was afraid of what he was going to do. And she had recommended a drastic decrease in custody and that I would have all decision making and that type of thing. So with this report now in hand, I'm like, okay, well, let's file an interim motion. We don't want to wait another year for the trial and deal with all this crap. Like, this is a nightmare. So I can't keep living like this. It's crazy. Let's file a motion. So we file a motion and we've got this report. I think it's pretty solid, but the judge basically turns to me and says, you unilaterally decided to move. You shouldn't have done that. I'm not changing anything. You guys can wait till trial. Like, I felt like such a victim again in that courtroom when she told me I shouldn't have unilaterally decided to move. And she basically reprimanded me, and I had to pay costs as well for that. And it was gut-wrenching. Like, I just felt like the legal system had just punched me. Like, what more do you need? I have this recommendation from a third party. And so that was really hard to swallow. And to continue then with his abuse until the trial. And so we're moving towards the trial, and just a few weeks before, like probably about 2 months before the trial starts, he enrolls them for baseball in a community an hour north of the city. So it's over an hour away from where I am. It's the most bizarre thing because he refuses to acknowledge that they live in the hometown where I am. He keeps saying they don't live in this town, refuses to admit that they've relocated to this town, even 4 or 5 years later. And I found out that he had done that and called him out on it, and that made him mad. And he ended up emailing our baseball area out here and telling them not to register the children for baseball in my area because children don't live here, and that if I try to volunteer here, they shouldn't let me because CFS will then be after them and will be coming to talk to them because I'm such a threat. So the smear campaign is continuing. And that was brought up before the judge later in the custody trial, and she was completely appalled by this email. And the reason she even found out about it was because he ended up also calling CFS on me. And he had called them and said, oh, the children are saying they are being abused by their mother. And Chris is saying that she spanked him or she pulled his arm or something when he was little, like 9 years ago. And they're afraid of her. And he had marks on him. So they ended up interviewing the kids. They went to some crimes unit to get interviewed without my knowledge. And they didn't believe any of this stuff because the kids they couldn't answer the questions. They couldn't give examples. They couldn't give details. And CFS ended up interviewing me. And I found out about these allegations and I explained to them everything that had been happening. And they were very understanding. And then, so because he had called CFS, it also seemed like a move because my lawyer, they also represented CFS. So because of that, I now had to get a new lawyer. So then I got a different lawyer and I ended up getting a fantastic lawyer who I would recommend highly to anybody. And she really understood the situation, and organization certainly is key when you go to trial. So we did have a 2-week custody trial, which is so very long. And I was on the stand, I believe, for 2.5 days. And just, it was an incredible experience that I don't recommend to anybody. But my parents were there for a lot of it. They were just there to support me. And my domestic violence counselor also came for 1 day when I was testifying, just to be support for me. And we had like CFS, school counselor, many professionals were there. The hospital social worker was there. And then while we were awaiting the decision, which took 5 months, so these things don't move quickly at all. We had to wait for this decision now, and I had no idea how it was going to go. In the meantime, he had been stalking me, and I had pictures of him parked behind my house and various other things. And he actually had a hearing for that. And after the hearing for that, my tires mysteriously were punctured the next day. Like things like that were still happening. And he tried to get a protection order against me while we were waiting for the custody trial decision, which thank goodness was not granted. But he had submitted a 300-page document to the court to try to get a protection order, which was ridiculous. If he had been granted that, things would have gone very badly. And then we got our decision, and it was worth the wait because it was so incredibly detailed. And even in the decision, she said that she was concerned about how he was going to respond. And because of that, he was not going to have any contact with the children for, I think it was about 6 weeks. And then it would be gradually, time was going to be added. So it would be every Wednesday night and every other weekend and different things in the summer. But so that was a big win, really. It was very similar to what the custody evaluation had been. But then 2 months after that, of course, he doesn't like this. So I have the police again come to my door, and now they're going to arrest me because he has claimed that I am harassing him with communication. And we are only using email and WhatsApp. When they show up at my door, the kids were with me and they had called me in advance again. And they said, like, sorry, but we're coming to arrest you, basically. And they said that I could just come out to their car, and it's similar to the other time, and they would read me the stuff and give me the papers, and I couldn't believe it. Like, you guys, like, this has gone on before. And in the meantime, he had actually been charged with assault of a police officer about a year earlier, and it went away, but he didn't like that he had been charged with that because then it was all over the newspapers, and he filed a lawsuit against the RCMP, the Attorney General of Canada, and the specific police officer, claiming that he had been unfairly treated. So that was ongoing. So because he had filed this stuff, I believe when he calls the police going forward, they jump and they don't want to be accused of not doing their job. So now every time he calls them, I have to deal with it. And so he says I'm doing harassing communication. So they come to my house and they arrest me. And I'm like, what harassing communication? Can you show me what it is? Well, no, they can't. I'm like, what? I need to know what it is so I don't do it anymore then. They can't show me. They won't show me. I still, to this day, I have no idea what it was. And they mentioned something about swearing, and I looked through all my communication, nothing. Like, I'm not the type of person that swears. So I don't swear. I don't swear on communication, written communication. I had no idea. I sent everything to my mom. And Mom, do you see anything in here that might be harassing communication? No. I'm like, I don't know. He probably made something up. So that ended up getting dropped, though, 2 months later at the end of summer. But in the meanwhile, I couldn't leave the province or anything with the kids. So he has the control here. He's got me under his thumb where I can't go anywhere. And even though I have custody of them most of the time, I can't do anything that entire summer. And throughout that summer, he as well, on the Wednesday nights when he was supposed to have the kids, I was supposed to drop them off at his house. And they are like 9, 10, and 11 years old. And he, most of the time when I go to drop them off, he's not there. And I don't know what to do because I pull up, there's no sign of him. I don't want to leave them there because if I leave them there, he's going to call CFS and tell them that I left them alone, unattended. But if I don't leave them there, he accuses me of breaking the court order. So I'm in a tough spot. And there were several times he would show up later. I would send him a message. I'd be, where are you? And he would say, just leave them there. Just leave them there. You're breaking the court order. You need to leave them there. Like, well, you're not here. Well, I'll be there. There was one time he didn't show up till 6:00, and I had taken him back to my house, and then he accused me of breaking the court order. Stuff was happening all summer. And finally it came to a point where I had gone there and the kids ran in the house. They're like, he's not here. The hydro's off. I'm like, okay, well, we're going back to my house. And the social worker had happened to call me when I got back to my house, and I told her all this stuff. And she's like, you need to call CFS, Child and Family, and tell them what's happening. Like, this is not okay. And she said, if you don't do it, then I will. And so I did it. And then, of course, they come and interview the kids, and they say, well, it's kind of like a fine line. And then I saw on their phone that when they were at his house on the farm, he would disappear for hours at a time. They wouldn't know where he was, and they'd be asking. And so I showed them all these texts as well. And I said, he's not there. He wants me to leave them there. I don't know what to do. And they're like, well, they have this phone. So that's kind of like supervision. So I'm like, okay, fine. Like, that's fine. At least I know. But because I had called CFS, he got mad. And the next time the kids went to him, they were supposed to be coming back to me 2 days before school started for that school year. And when they were supposed to be dropped off, they weren't. And I sent him a message and I said, like, where are the kids? He didn't respond. And I had 3 hours. I sent him like 3 messages in 3 hours. No kids, no response. Finally, he says, I have the kids here. They're happy and healthy. They will not be going to you today. So I now panic and I send my lawyer a message. It's like holiday Monday or something, but she's so fantastic. She responds and deals with this all. And to kind of simplify the story, he ended up keeping the kids the first week of school. I had no idea where they were. In the summer, he had taken them to Nebraska across the border, had not told me. I had found out by looking at their cell phone. And so I had that concern in back of my head. I didn't know where they were. I didn't know if they were in the country. I had no idea where they were. And I just knew they weren't coming back to me and they weren't going to school. I would check the school records in the morning and nope, they were not there. And he was not responding to me. And of course, I called the police. And I'm like, I have this court order. He's broken the court order. They're not coming back. And the police refused to do anything because I did not have a police enforcement clause, which I have now become an expert in police enforcement clauses and the fact that you should get one in your court order if you can. And the police kept telling me, we're not going to do anything because you don't have a police enforcement clause. You should go down to the courthouse and get one. Well, that's much easier said than done. They don't just hand them out to anybody. You have to have valid reason. And the RCMP generally, or the police generally, opposes a police enforcement clause by the police, their legal team, because they don't want every court order to have a police enforcement clause, because then everybody's going to be using the police enforcement clause and they're going to be overwhelm the system. So I would say, like, I was calling the police all the time. And after a few days of him keeping the kids past his allotted time, I realized he was going to run out of medication for Josh. So I asked him how much medication he had, and he refused to tell me. And so then I started getting genuinely concerned about the medication. So I was reaching out to CFS as well. And CFS is basically saying, well, it's not a wellness issue. You need to deal with it either with the police or in family court. So nobody wants to actually deal with this. I'm just supposed to somehow deal with all this. And of course, my lawyer is sending motions, and we've now got an emergent motion set for like 3 weeks later. And we're trying to serve him this motion, and we can't even serve him because he's evading service. The guy who finally did serve him after like 3 attempts wrote in his affidavit that my ex had tried to run him over with the tractor once. And by the time, after a week, all of a sudden he decides that he's going to let the kids go to school. And it's just like, oh, well, he's flexed his muscles for a week. Now we're going to go back to the middle. And he brings him to school, and then I'm allowed to have him that weekend, and things go back like for no reason. And we move forward though with our contempt of court motion now. And we met with the judge, and she's very stern with him and tells him, he needs to comply. And we had said he went to Nebraska, didn't tell me he's doing these other things, and he abducted the kids for this week, and so on. And we need a police enforcement clause. And then I had been planning to take the kids to Orlando that winter, and I had been emailing him, asking him to sign a consent form. And he was refusing, even though he's being looked at for contempt of court. And we ended up having to file a motion to see if she can just sign off on me not needing his consent, because he's refusing to sign this thing. And then, of course, like 2 days before the hearing, he finally signs it. And it just ends up, it's like he just does not care what anybody tells him. He doesn't care what the rules are. He's just going to do whatever he wants to do. And he did end up being found in contempt of court. And when he found that out, he filed a counter claim against me and said I was in contempt of court, and that it was vague. He called me a narcissist in his claim, which was highly amusing, and just a whole bunch of degrading words, and said I was abusing the kids, just these vague terms, no specific examples. And he also said that he wanted, as part of his hearing, because once you're found in contempt of court, you have a penalty hearing to determine what you discuss, like what the penalty should be. So he wanted, before the penalty hearing, he wanted to be able to cross-examine me on a stand about my contempt of court that he's saying I'm in, and this whole issue about him abducting the kids. And that was granted because he now was self-representing, and the judge wanted him to have every opportunity so that there's not going to be an appeal. So he actually was able to cross-examine me for like 4 hours about whatever the heck he wanted, which is so... When I found out he was going to be able to cross-examine me, it's just like in a state of shock. Like, I don't understand this system, how that is allowed. But anyway, so we went through that, and in the end, his counterclaim against me was dismissed, and he was held in contempt of court, and his penalty was he's got even more reduced time, and he can't leave the province for 2 years with the kids, and I get them for 2 weeks before school and a bunch of stuff. So, and then if he breaks the court order again, he goes to jail for a week automatically if we take it to court. And I have a police enforcement clause now, which is great, because apparently if you don't have one, your court order is basically firewood, which I'm very sad to say. Unless you get a good police office, I guess, then they might enforce it. But in my experience, not helpful.
So you've had, I'm going to say, saying a lot does not do this justice of what has occurred here. Your life has been destroyed. You had someone who has come in here and just destroyed everything and has put you in a massive hole and continues to just the havoc that has been wreaked here will have reverberations for a very long time. So you're here, you're talking to me, you've gotten to this point, you haven't cried while we have talked. But how do you get up every day? Like, obviously your kids are a motivation for you. No one in the system was there to protect you. Nothing is there to protect you. And the fact that you're talking to me and sound upbeat. I mean, how do you feel every day? Like, what's kind of going on, and how do you get through days? Because you are in this uphill battle in so many ways. Thank goodness that you have family that has been helpful, but still, like, this person scorched every single piece of earth that you've lived on.
So true. That's a great summary. And I've done the therapy. I've done all those counseling sessions with my domestic violence person. But I honestly feel like when I'm talking to her, I'm just giving her a recap on the drama that's happened since my prior session with her. So I don't really feel like it's therapy. And I've tried to find an EMDR person and haven't really been successful. How do I get up in the morning? I get up and I am so freaking glad to be where I am. I am so grateful. I was just thinking yesterday, I'm like, I wouldn't change. I'm still so glad I left. The freedom that I have has no price, and it greatly trumps all the crap that I have to put up with. And it's been a very, very big cost, and not just financially, but emotionally. Like cognitively, my brain, I feel like my brain doesn't work. It's hard to explain, but I feel like I was telling somebody the other day, I had got a book to read when we went on a trip this summer, and it's just like a lighthearted biography, and I could not get past like the first page. I can't sit and read a book. I can't focus on a book, like a fiction book. It's so weird. And I work in an accounting field, and I have to somehow get it together every day and work full time and support my children. And I'm able to compartmentalize remarkably well, which has been my saving grace, because I can somehow still do my job and do it well. And I can still parent, and I feel like I'm parenting pretty well. But I haven't dealt with any of this crap, really. I have not dealt with the fact that the transplant was canceled. I have not addressed that. I have not sat down and had a good cry since I left. I haven't reflected on all of what I went through. I did write a book, which was a form of therapy for me, but it took me 4 years. I had to put it down at the point where I did his drivers got taken away, because I couldn't get past how I didn't walk away from the marriage at that point. And
sorry, the logical part of you is in charge, and it's preventing the like physical and emotional stuff that's inside your body from taking over. Because I assume, it is my assumption, that one day the logic part of your brain will say, okay, I'm ready to go into this quadrant of my compartmentalization and to sit in that quadrant where you're putting all of those things, because right now you're still surviving and you're still, trying to get there. There'll be a moment where I think you'll probably say to yourself, okay, I think I can now handle going there. And I think everyone knows internally when that is. Sometimes it can't be stopped, but there's some people that, can logically move themselves around to eventually get to that point where, you sit in it and you can really finally relax and let yourself fall apart, because you deserve to be allowed to fall apart. And I hope one day that you get that opportunity to feel like it's safe enough to do so. Like, okay, my kids are taken care of, work's okay. I can do this a little here. I got my family here. I got this here. I got this here. But it's okay for me right now to just, what does crying feel like today? And to like kind of let it go. And it might be a little bit of a while for it to kind of come out and deal with it. But right now, I think you're keeping yourself really as safe as possible because you're still in it. Fair to say or no?
Super perceptive. That's 100% what it is. I'm still in survival mode, and I still have triggers. Every day I will all of a sudden have the fleeting thought, are the police going to be at my door today? Like I'm on guard for that at all times. And it just pops into my head. If I hear sirens, I freeze. And like, did he call them again? Did he make up some allegation? So and I still get triggered sometimes by the phone. Not as much, but because there's still something that I have to deal with at least once a week now. It feels like it's gone down drastically, but there's still things to deal with. And my children are still seeing him on a regular basis, and they are still subject to all the things that he does and says. And then I have to deal with the aftermath and them being dysregulated and them wanting, like my daughter wants to sleep in my bed and all these things, and they're scared and they're confused and all of that. It's exhausting, but it has to be done. So yes, I do not have, you're very right. That's very perceptive. And I've not thought of that the logical part of me is doing just fine, but the rest is just on the back burner. And at some point I'll have to catch up on that end, but I'm not ready to do that yet. And I don't have the time and the space and all of that to get there. I'm such a happy person and positive. Like I've talked to the neighbors several times, the ones who helped me that one day, and they say we're just amazed at how upbeat you are and how positive. And I'm like, well, I'm just so grateful. I'm so happy to be in my own house. I don't have eggshells. It's just such a wonderful feeling, and I'm just so happy to be here and surviving and going on and telling my story and hoping that other people are going to realize they're not alone in this and these stories are real. Like I want to get that out there, that this is happening and people don't know about it. I certainly did not.
And if you had any words of wisdom for everyone listening, what would they be?
I got a couple. I would say to journal things right as soon as they start happening, even when you're married, because part of it is to remember stuff, because I can't remember years of my life. I can't remember when my kids were little. Those 3 years were crazy when I was married to him. I literally can't remember those years. And that is so sad for me to say and admit. And I will have to deal with that at some point, because like who can't remember when their kids were little? I can't. I remember through my journals. I remember through the videos and the pictures. That's how I remember. I was completely dissociated and in survival mode through those years. So, and you don't know at the time, you're not going to remember. So for your own self, for your future self, a journal, video, all that, I would say to gain knowledge and research is really key. My eyes were first open when I started reading books about emotional abuse and narcissism while I was still married. And I started realizing that this was not normal. I don't know if I can give a shout out to my book, but I wrote Scars on the Inside, a memoir, and that just talks about about my marriage and why I stayed and all that. I am planning a second book, but that's going to be on since I left him and those years of post-separation abuse, which are going to be hard to write about. But podcasts like this have been my saving grace. I started with this podcast and got hooked on it because I just felt so drawn into the stories and how much they resonated with me and how applicable they were. And to hear other people's stories and go, wow, that sounds a lot like my story. Just the names are changed sometimes and maybe the locations, but there's so much that it is the same. And you go, these guys all use the same playbook and they have the same tactics. And just to know you're not alone in that, I feel like hearing those stories, reading books, podcasts helps so much. Another word of wisdom, do your research if you have any flags. And I mean, I did my research, but I still ignore the flags. So I get it if you do your research and you still give yourself grace. I have given myself grace and I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I don't even hate my ex. I choose to just let that go. And I think that helps me to move on every day. And last thing, if you don't feel like your lawyer is a good fit, don't feel like you have to stay with them. I have moved on several times and I'm just so glad that I ended up with the lawyer that I have. And it is, you got to do what you got to do for your kids sometimes. So that's it for my words of wisdom. Thank you, Brandon.
Well, Julia, I really want to thank you today for, sharing every one of your stories, all the little details, and every person out here is going to be validated by what you went through. We're all giving you a big, big hug, and, we're happy that you're here, you're alive, and that you're, not walking on eggshells. And we'll probably have you back in a year or whenever, to figure out like what's gone on with you in that time. So just a really big thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Julia, for being our guest today. And if you want to be a guest like Julia was today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com and click on the guest form button at the top of the page. There you can read all of our instructions and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@pm.me or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. And please do send it in the format that we ask for. Also, at our website, we have a support group, so if you need support, join our support group today by clicking on the support group button at narcissistapocalypse.com. Inside, you'll see that we have Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. So if you need support, join our support group today. And that is it for today's episode. So for myself and Julia, we hope you have a good night.